Welcome to this evening's webinar. Tonight we're going to look at developing students' digital skills in transition year and the use of a blended approach to facilitate learning in TY. This is the second of our TY Picnic webinar series. Last week's webinar looked at general planning considerations for the TY programme in 2020-2021. Next week's webinar will look at work experience and bridging the gap. I want to introduce our PDST TY team to you all. We have Glenda Groom, who is a TY coordinator at Cross and Passion in Kilcullen. We have John Kerr, who is TY coordinator at Patrician High School in Carrickmacross. And both Glenda and John are active members of the TY TPN. We have Brendan O'Halloran and Mark O'Flynn, who are full-time PDST advisors, and they work part-time on transition year support. We have Esther Herlihy, who is our administrator based out of Navan Education Centre, and my name is Stephen Gamble. I'm the PDST team leader with responsibility for transition year support. If you wish to avail of further support following tonight's event, you can do so by applying for school support at pdst.ie/school support. To do so, you'll need your school's roll number and the password, which is shown on screen. It's important that any applications for support are done in consultation with your school management, as a single application goes in from each school to cover all supports for different programs and subjects. Alternatively, if you have any questions, you can email us at ty@pdst.ie. If you want to keep up to date on any developments around TY, you can follow us on Twitter at PDSTTY, and our webpage on the PDST website has resources added to it on a regular basis. Before we get into tonight's webinar, just a few protocols to make you aware of. While we're in the main room, if everybody could keep their microphones muted, that would be great, as it will allow us to hear the presenters a lot more clearly. Please do not record tonight's webinar. You do not have permission to do so. The webinar will last for approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes, and we would appreciate you giving your full attention to it during that time. If you have any questions throughout the event, please use the chat feature in Zoom to ask them, and we'll either answer them over the course of the event or we'll follow up with an email afterwards. Later on in tonight's webinar, you'll break out into smaller group discussions, and when you do so, we would ask that you unmute your microphone and turn on your camera. It just makes for a more personable experience. This webinar will focus on two key aspects mentioned in the Department of Education's Return to School for Transition Year guidance document. These relate to the provision of blended learning experience for students and the development of students' digital skills. Over the course of the next hour and 15 minutes, we're going to start with an overview of blended learning, and then we're going to break into a section of the webinar where we'll hear about the experience of various coordinators work in this area. Then we'll break into smaller group discussions, we'll take some feedback, and we'll summarise the learning from tonight's event. Let's start now by taking a look at blended learning. I'm conscious that blended learning is a term which has come to prominence in education in the last number of months. So before we go any further, I'd like you to take 1 minute to think to yourself what you understand blended learning to be. You might like to write this definition down on a piece of paper and refer to it as we go through the rest of the webinar. Will your definition match my definition and the examples of blended learning practice which we'll hear about from a number of schools? How is it similar? How is it different? If you'd like to pause the video for a minute think about your definition of blended learning, and then unpause it when you're ready to proceed. To start off in understanding blended learning, it's useful to consider the change to education which has happened over the past 6 months. Prior to March 12th, the majority of teaching, learning and assessment happened via the traditional face-to-face model, which we're all well practiced in. Following the closure of schools, we all worked hard to facilitate the continuation of learning in whatever way we could. We worked together to upskill ourselves in new technologies and new approaches to teaching, learning and assessment, and we worked hard in doing so. We might call this practice emergency remote teaching, as it happened with little prior warning or planning. As we look to the year ahead, it is important that we take what we've learned in the earlier part of this year and look to develop our practice so that we are in the best position to continue learning for our students in the event of further public health challenges. To do this, we will need to develop a blended approach to our teaching. Indeed, the Department of Education framework for reopening and operating schools states this as a requirement. So, what is blended learning? One definition identifies blended learning as the thoughtful integration of classroom face-to-face learning experiences with online learning experiences. This definition points out a very important fact, that blended learning has been happening in Irish classrooms for many years now. This in turn raises another important point, that blended learning is not just about contingency in a COVID-19 world. There are other, longer-term benefits to engaging in a blended approach. These include better engagement by students, better interaction between individuals within the learning community, higher levels of motivation, higher levels of achievement, and flexibility in terms of access, content, and more. Looked at from the point of view of the philosophy of the TY programme, blended learning supports students in becoming self-directed learners and more. Looked at from the point of view of senior cycle, a blended approach which is implemented effectively can support the development of all 5 key skills. There are many different models of blended learning, but I'm going to highlight 2. We have the flipped classroom model, where students are encouraged to engage with rich content in their own time in preparation for the next lesson. The face-to-face lesson time is then used to facilitate something which is higher order or where the presence of the teacher is crucial. For example, in a debate, in a classroom discussion, or in a problem-solving session based on the consumed content. This is the blended approach which has been most frequently used in Irish schools to date. Our second model is the enriched virtual model, where class time is used to set up learning and then students are provided with tasks to extend this learning. This model requires minimal face-to-face contact and will probably be most useful in the case of a school being closed for a period of time. The online part of all of these models may include elements which are synchronous, that is delivered in real time, or asynchronous, which are engaged with at the discretion of the student when it suits them. For example, when this webinar happened live in September, it was an example of synchronous learning. As you watch this recording of the webinar now, you are engaging with it asynchronously. There are benefits and drawbacks to each approach. For example, the benefit of engaging with this content asynchronously is mainly around ease of access and access at a time which is convenient and productive for you. The drawback to this type of engagement is that you miss out on the group discussion which happened during the live event. For a synchronous event, the real benefit is the opportunity to engage with the presenters and the other participants to share and gain ideas. The disadvantage of this approach is that everyone who attended live had to be free at the time of the event, have access to a device at that time, have a quiet place to watch the event at that time, and so on. You can transpose these benefits and drawbacks to blended learning for students in your classroom. Another key difference between emergency remote teaching and blended learning is the use of rich tasks. The benefits of blended learning are unlikely to be felt if we simply use digital technologies to assign work for students to complete, turn in, and get graded. An effective blended learning approach relies on the use of rich tasks which engage students with the learning intentions and provide an experience where inquiry is promoted and students get to develop all 5 key skills. The design of rich tasks to support blended learning is not trivial, but with suitable support and through working together we can develop our expertise in providing students with such tasks. We do this incrementally over time, if you like, one step at a time. That's a very quick overview of blended learning. If you want more information, there are many excellent resources available. PDST have a dedicated blended learning page where you'll find lots of useful content, advice, and links to other resources. You can also book support in blended learning from one of the PDST team by applying for school support. So that's our introduction to blended learning complete. We're now going to move into the section of the webinar where we hear from different coordinators and different schools about their experience of introducing blended learning approaches to their students. I'm going to hand you over to my colleague Brendan O'Halloran, who will bring you through this section.
Thanks for that, Stephen, and welcome everybody. So I think Stephen has very nicely queued up the pieces that follow, which aim to contextualise blended learning within the context of transition year. I was very fortunate to catch up with Kieran Murphy, who is the TY coordinator in St. Pat's in Navan, and Sinead McDonald, the TY coordinator in Holy Faith Clontarf earlier in the week, who spared the time to speak with me in relation to their approaches to blended learning in their transition year programmes. So we're going to hear a little from them now.
I'd like to welcome Kieran Murphy from St. Pat's in Navan and Sinead McDonald from Holy Faith Clontarf. Welcome, guys.
Hi.
How you doing?
So this evening we're just going to talk through about blended learning and contextualising that in the classroom. So would you like to start, Kieran, about telling me about your journey, maybe the platform you're using and how things are progressing so far?
Yeah, so about 2 years ago now, our school invested in a platform called Schoolwise, which I think maybe is one that not everyone's not familiar with. It's a virtual learning environment, and essentially every class and every teacher in the school gets set up on a system. It's essentially, it is very, very similar to Google Classroom, except that instead of having every teacher set up their classes and every student adding to it, it syncs with either ePortal or Facility or VSware, and it creates the classes for you. Now, our plan at the time was to maybe start with the first years and then to kind of organically work it through. And then the lockdown happened, and very, very quickly we had to try and just get upskill the teachers and the students with it. And as a result, I was lucky in that I had been kind of using it a little bit with transition years. And but overall it was very, very successful, and we were actually lucky that we had it, because without it I think it would have been difficult to deliver content to the entire school in the event of a lockdown, and scrambling to set up different classes in Google Classroom. So we were lucky from that point of view, but that's kind of where we're at the minute. And now obviously because of that we are using it more widely than we would have originally, but I think it's working quite well so far.
Very good. And Sinead, in the Holy Faith, how are things working out there? What are you using?
We're using Office 365, and it was introduced to the school probably about 4 or 5 years ago. There was a basic introduction done for staff, and really it was only staff that used it initially for OneDrive for storage space and things to get used to it. Then a group of teachers did a digital leaders course in the school over a 2-year period, with a view to then expanding that out to other staff members. And I signed up for that, so I was using it with a number of my classes. We were kind of given freedom to use it with our classes if we felt comfortable using it. So I started to use Teams and OneNote and forms and things like that with my own classes with LCBP and with TY and art. And then last year, year before last, I signed up for the PDST's ePortfolio project. So last year I introduced that, and with my TYs, I moved a section of their what would have been a paper portfolio, their big TY folder, as we called it, and we moved parts of that digitally last year onto OneNote. So I started with moving their work experience reports and their GOSHGA and their social justice onto a digital platform, and the rest was still being done in their folder with the aim to grow it slowly. But then again, lockdown happened and I had them putting everything in. A lot of other teachers had started to use it, quite a few hadn't really. But again, we were thrown into a situation where everybody had to. But there were certainly large numbers of students that had used it because of the variety of teachers. They were already in Teams with some teachers, and so Teams wasn't really new for a lot of students, but OneNote was. The idea of uploading their work to teachers was new. They've been able to communicate with teachers and receive work from teachers, but them giving work back was very new to them during lockdown. And now at the moment we are full embracing Teams because we have a situation where we have too many students in classrooms. So we have overspill and we're live streaming from classrooms. The teachers are using Teams meetings to live stream. So we're scaling very quickly.
Excellent. That sounds very interesting. And just going back to the digital portfolio there, that sounds excellent. How is that progressing?
Yep. This year I have moved the whole thing digitally. So I have shared work in the content library with students in OneNote. Again, last year I did the same, but it was a lot less that I was sharing. This year I moved all my tutor booklets and everything into OneNote, and I've shared all of it with them. And then I've created folders for them and pages for them that they can see what they have to upload, and it's kind of tailored for them to see where to put things, where I want them kind of ordered.
Excellent. And how has that been from a student's perspective then? Have they found that very difficult, the transition across to using a digital portfolio as opposed to the physical portfolio? Or
well, I think, obviously we're only at the start of the year, so the current TYs, I'm only introducing it to them, but they would have used it with teachers during lockdown. A lot of teachers had started to use OneNote, so even today I had a tutor group and I pulled it up on the screen and they were familiar with it and they understood that they had to upload files and PowerPoints or whatever they produced for their folder. But certainly the group last year, by the end of the year, certainly had got to grips with it much better. And I suppose one of the biggest teething problems was there's a lot of options in Office as to where you can send a teacher work. You can send them an email, you can send them a chat, you can put it in assignments and Teams, and to get them all putting it in the same place, to understand that actually I wanted in OneNote, I wanted you to create a kind of a portfolio, or I was trying to describe it like a copybook. It's your little folder, all your work should be in there, and then you'd get a chat with a photograph of their work. So I suppose there's a lot of options for them. They can get the work to you very easily, but to have it where maybe as a teacher you want to confine it and to be able to correct it in that space can take a bit of upskilling for the students to learn how to do that.
Very good. And Kieran, over to you. I suppose one of the advantages maybe of using a virtual learning environment is it allows you to communicate with students, staff, and possibly even parents. How have you found it from that point of view? Has it helped in terms of communicating more effectively with students?
Yeah, well, definitely last year I found that it was, because I actually took over as coordinator last year, but my timetable had already been done. So essentially I didn't actually have much contact with them. So being able to communicate with them via a virtual learning environment was crucial, because otherwise I had to actually physically get to them as well as teaching all my classes well. And I would have found that extremely difficult. So I think as well, it fits in well with the ethos of transition year, where kind of the information's there for them if they want it, rather than you're going in and spoon feeding them. So people will know watching this, like as a TY coordinator, you might get 10, 12 emails a day with different competitions, different opportunities, different placements, different things that are on for transition years. And if you were to physically go to them and give them this stuff all the time, it would be very onerous and probably not possible as well. Whereas having that ability to kind of just put it on a notice board that the lads just got into the habit of scrolling through and checking, like I said, it was self-directed. It was kind of self-motivating. They had to do it. It was there for them if they wanted it. and I kind of felt that it rewarded the students who were there, who were willing to invest a little bit more in that. So I found that was very, very beneficial.
Introducing new technology or new initiatives in any space is difficult. So what drawbacks would there have been, and how did you overcome them?
I suppose one drawback would be, so we don't have devices. We're not like a one-to-one device school, and also like phones for us are completely off the table, so not allowed phones at all. So you're trying to introduce digital technologies, but then there's a limited amount. Now it is improving, but there was a limited amount. So one difficulty was just getting the students to have access to that. And then even at home, the majority were quite good, but we've even found that the access to digital technologies, and especially internet connections at home, was poor. So that was definitely a challenge. That's a challenge in all schools, and I think it's something it's a work in progress in all schools going forward. But to me, that was probably one of the main challenges we had. The students tend to be quite good at technology, and we were lucky we have a good IT program in first, second, and third year. So we're inheriting students in transition year who have pretty good IT skills, and they tend to pick things up a lot quicker than us as teachers even. So I think once they have a platform, and if it's consistent and every teacher is using the same platform, then the kids get very, very good at it very, very quickly, I find.
So Sinead, I was just wondering about at the start of TY, when students come into you, do you do a module in terms of upskilling students and teachers to ensure that you're all on the same page?
At the moment, I suppose because it's relatively new for students, most of the students coming in don't have a huge proficiency in using Office 365. If they'd have been exposed to it, they would have maybe used Teams and chat and things like that. The intention this year, part of the project I was involved in, was that this year, at the start of the year, we had attended as part of the TY induction to have an IT induction and to take them all in groups, them devices, and work them through that. Unfortunately, with the way things are and the social distancing and the whole school being full of bodies, it wasn't possible to give rooms over to do that. So what I'm doing at the moment, TY tutors are spending the first class, and if necessary, the first 2 weeks like of classes. And all TYs have one tutorial a week for 40 minutes. So I had mine today, and really that's it. We looked at and how to code, and as I said, I got them to use their devices and how to share and how to find work. They also do have one computers class a week each, and so the computers teacher is going to kind of go through our platform and explain the different functions, because I want them to be able to use other things within it. I want them to be able to use forms, do quizzes, or to survey people. I want them to be able to use Sway to make it do videos. So the computer teachers want to introduce those things to them, so that their portfolio isn't just all Word documents. I'm kind of looking for variety and a bit of creativity.
Very good. That's very interesting. So you have one computer class a week for the full TY
for the full year.
Yeah, for the full year, and then separately you have digital portfolio as well.
Well, yes, the digital portfolio falls into their tutorial class. So in tutorial,
right, okay. Yeah.
Do a number of things, but the bulk of it is about their TY journal and keeping a record and discussing. Like historically, I suppose it would have been a kind of a discussion class, and you'd be chatting about what they've done, and they'd go home and write up a report. Whereas now, because it's moving digital and we can let them have devices, it'll be more about actually producing it in class.
Yeah, so like similar to Sinead, we would also have an IT class for an hour a week, so one period of the timetable for the year. And in the past, that's been split between students doing ECDL, and at risk of ECDL bashing, we also decided to go a different way, because I kind of took the decision that I wanted to focus more on the Google apps. So, for example, for our digital portfolio, e-portfolio this year, we will be using Google Sites. So getting the students to create their own Google site. So, and then using that to showcase the work that they do digitally throughout the year. Now, while the students might be good with technology and coding, I don't think too many of them will have designed their own website before. So obviously that then becomes a focus for the IT class. So working towards that becomes a major goal of what the IT teacher is trying to accomplish. The other thing actually I did want to say was that I think there is an opportunity for students globally to get certified in Google, so the Google apps. Now, I think it's more at the minute based in America, so you can sign up and get a discounted rate that the students then can essentially be part of a plug and play, so they can work through these Google apps, the training in the Google apps at their own pace, and at the end of it become certified, and that would be a huge benefit for them. It's something that I think is on the way to Ireland. I think they are going to look at making that available to students in Ireland. So I would say to watch the space for that, because I think for any Google schools that are out there, that's certainly going to be beneficial, because even if the teacher isn't necessarily proficient in the use of the apps themselves, the students with a set of earphones can work through this at their own pace. And again, it provides for that differentiation, because even though I said that the students are proficient, some clearly are ahead of others. So some might be thinking that organizing a Google Drive folder is the easiest thing in the world, and they can fly through that, whereas others might need a little bit of help in it. So it certainly helps from that regard.
Very good. A big takeaway from me from speaking to both of you has been, how useful you found the digital portfolios. So I suppose would that be something that you'd recommend? You both spoke highly of it to other TY coordinators, maybe who don't have a digital portfolio or are contemplating maybe moving from a physical portfolio across.
Absolutely. I mean, Kira mentioned earlier that I'd be the same, I couldn't imagine now at this point not having some digital, at least for communication with the TYs more and more, and moving on to everything into the digital platform, that's where we're communicating and everything. Especially in the current environment, I couldn't imagine not having it, because it's my only method really of communicating with all of them at the one time.
Right to cut in there, Brendan, but it's like, so with we're in an all boys school, and some of the feedback that I get from parents in particular is that they're not as informed as they'd like to be about what TY is like for their sons, because believe it or not, young lads don't like to talk about school too much. So I think having something that like a digital portfolio, if the parents are aware that it exists and that they have access to it. So in my case, a website, I can say to the parents, well, if you want to know what your son's transition year is like, go get him to share his webpage with you, and then they're getting a snapshot of what his transition year experience is like. You might not be able to articulate it, but they can look in and they can go through and they can see for themselves. And I think that's amazing.
Thanks to Sinead and Kieran there for that insight into setting up your TYs for blended learning. I thought it was really interesting how you both have engaged in the use of digital portfolios, yet use different tools and approaches to achieve this. I also found it very interesting how you plan to develop this further. It was very authentic in terms of the plans you had developed, but as you said, then COVID hit, and to hear how you have had to adapt, which is the hallmark of any good TY coordinator, and something that all our participants can relate to. So thanks for that. So picking up on some of the points that Sinead made and how she has utilised OneNote, we felt it might be worth looking at it. It's a free digital tool for teachers that may be helpful for a blended learning approach, and whilst it's not totally agnostic, it can be incorporated into most learning platforms, including Classroom, Google Classroom, Edmodo and Moodle, just to name a few. And while we in PDST are not promoting any VLE or digital tools above others, we are very fortunate to have such expertise in Kieran, Sinead, Garrett and Maria, whom you'll hear from shortly, willing to share their stories so that we could bring them to you. So now we're going to hear a little from Garrett Callinan, who recorded a short piece to give us an insight in Coláiste Balaclara's use of technology in TY.
In this video, we're going to look at how we use Microsoft Teams and OneNote to support the transition year programme at Coláiste Balaclara. My name is Garrett Callinan and I'm an ICT coordinator here at the school, as well as a Microsoft Innovative Educator expert. We'll speak about how we use Microsoft 365 to create an online learning environment, and by using Teams to communicate with students and teachers, using OneNote to promote student engagement and participation, and using assignments to capture important student experiences, we manage a transition year programme with 170 students each year. By taking this approach, we've also important data allowing for teachers monitoring a student's work and their progression through transition year. This online platform allows us to transition to distance learning if the need should arise, with all resources already set up and both students and staff having gained practice of using them in the school setting. With transition year's focus on students' independent learning, Teams in OneNote can be effectively used to develop skills through students' experience both within the school and within the wider community through projects such as Goshka and work experience. This independent learning can then feed into their senior cycle programme, being built upon to support their teaching and learning at that time. As a school, we've chosen Microsoft 365 for a number of reasons, but primarily we've chosen this because it's a free resource that students can make great use of in getting skills that will benefit them in the world of work or in further education, while being able to easily access it from any device, including their smartphones, tablets, and laptops to support their learning. Students can sign into their school account from their own smartphone and capture evidence of their learning at any time, from anywhere, using Teams and OneNote. They can fully engage with this without the need for additional expense, and for us, this ease of access is key. With Teams and OneNote, it couldn't be easier for students to get involved in transition year. Each of our transition year teachers sets up a class team for each individual teaching group on their timetable, be it a subject or a module. As a teacher, I use the class team template to easily get up and running with all the tools needed to get information across to my students and gather information back from them. This includes key apps for communication, storage of work, and assessment. Using the class notebook built into this team, I align my approach to the focus of TY for that year, focusing on important aspects of the course that I want students to be aware of. I then share a join code with my student. This puts the responsibility back on them to join the team and makes them the owner of their own learning. They can join this using the Teams app on their smartphone or tablet, or indeed from any device by going to www.office.com. Within each team, we can access a OneNote class notebook. This will contain a content library where I can store my teacher notes without students being able to edit them. It will also have a collaboration space where students can work on group projects over the course of the year. It'll have a personal notebook space which is private to each individual student and their teacher, allowing for monitoring of completed work and storage of this work. And finally, it will have a teacher-only section where I can store important private notes and upcoming work for this class without students having access. As we've already mentioned, this can be accessed from any device, so once a student opens their notebook at the start of the year, they can incrementally add to it as the year progresses, logging their learning and experiences in one place. When setting up this notebook, I can align it to meet the needs of our TY programme and structure it in such a way that students' learning is neatly organised, assisting the students too in developing their own organisational skills to benefit them in senior cycle. By having a separate notebook for each module, I can curate and create the resources that I use in class, allowing for greater organisation and allowing for easy sharing of these resources with students. All of this can be used by students to create a chronicle of their journey through transition year, capturing images, writing reflections, and making use of other digital tools, bringing them into their own OneNote portfolio. As we've already seen, an individual team for each subject can benefit students and allow for easier teacher monitoring. But it can also be good to have a year group team. This will allow us to monitor student engagement and promote key projects and elements that are common to all students in transition year. Using the learning focus tools built into the class teams, I can use this to improve communication and tracking and assessment with this group. Moving over to this full TY group notebook, this is where I can share detailed info and documents with our students. For example, we can promote major programs such as Goshka, capture weekly reflections with the help of assignments, and conduct online assemblies to assist with social distancing. We can provide students with opportunities to sign up in such a place that it's fair to all students getting the same information at the same time. We can make use of this information in real time to ensure that students are staying on track with their important deadlines. Printing to OneNote is also a great way of managing a workflow. Rather than going and printing out hard copies of anything, I can print this directly to OneNote and provide it to students in digital form, where they can edit it if needs be or fill in forms. Assignments is a powerful feature of any class team that can be used hand in hand with OneNote to efficiently and effectively track project work and student experiences. Using assignments, we can track completion, provide feedback, and quickly correct student work. Assignments also allows for student work to be kept in a safe place digitally and accessed at any time afterwards. It provides a gradebook for students and teachers alike and allows for long-term monitoring of their progress. By setting up an assignment, I can use this as a template moving forward. So in this case, I'm setting up a weekly reflection that I would like each transition year student to complete. The next time I go in here, I can reuse this assignment. From a student point of view, they can go in and complete their assignment by clicking on the notification on assignments on the left-hand side. And as a teacher, I can go back in and check that this work is being done, providing any relevant feedback to the student in real time. As we saw last year, moving to remote learning is a real possibility at any time. And even this year in school, things aren't the way they have been. So organising a transition year assembly can be quite difficult at times. By having our TY team set up, we can do this nice and easily simply by scheduling a meeting within the general channel of our TY team. Students will get this added to their calendar and will get a reminder when the meeting starts. They'll be able to join it from any device, or we could use this to broadcast our live assembly here in school to teacher devices. Through Microsoft 365 and in particular Teams and OneNote, we can effectively run our transition year program by involving students as much as possible, getting them involved in important events within transition year, assessing their work, sharing resources, and capturing important milestones within the transition year journey, creating a digital portfolio that they can have at the end of the year.
Thanks very much to Garrett there in Coláiste Baile I found it very interesting some of the points that Garrett made in relation to using the technology to promote engagement, to capture student experiences, to foster independent learning, and to put responsibility back in the student, which is also something we heard from Kieran and Stephen made reference to earlier as well. The other thing that struck me from that piece was how Garrett highlighted the gathering of completed student work and capturing the important milestones which are housed within their digital portfolio, which in this case was using OneNote. So thanks again to Garrett for sharing. A nice coincidence when putting pieces together for this webinar was when I spoke to Kieran and Sinead earlier, and they had both mentioned about how important it is for students to develop strong digital literacy prior to and in TY, and how this would be bolstered by a certified program affordable to schools. For various reasons, they had both stepped away from offering ECDL to TYs, and this is something that I had heard anecdotally from TY coordinators and felt it would be worthy of inclusion also. Kieran had mentioned how he is using Google Course to certify students in Google Apps for Education, and I linked up with Maria Brosnan from Kinsale Community College, who's going to discuss another alternative in the Microsoft Office Specialist Program, or MOS program as it's also known. So we're going to hear from Maria now.
Kinsale Community School has always been very innovative and progressive with regards to our provision and the development of ICT. Collaboration with Microsoft began in 2017, following a whole school evaluation, where one of the recommendations was that we will identify a single virtual learning environment for use for staff and students. Following on from this, we were selected to be a pilot for the Digital Learning Framework, which was run by the PDSD. During this framework, one of our goals was to identify which single virtual learning environment we would use. Microsoft 365 was our chosen platform, and following on from that, the students and staff really embraced the use of 365, and we were fortunate to be selected as a Microsoft Showcase School in November 2019. Curriculum provision at Kinsale Community School has supported the use of ICT through digital media literacy at junior cycle, coding, also a short course at junior cycle, the Microsoft Office Specialist in TUI, and computer science in senior cycle.
Our students today are using the immense power of the internet and social media to explore, connect, create, and learn in ways never imagined. These experiences offer amazing opportunities, but there are also potential pitfalls, such as cyberbullying, digital cheating, and safety and security online. First, second, and third year students at Kinsale Community School study a short course in digital media literacy. This improves their ability to efficiently find, identify, evaluate, and create digital information. While students are learning to be savvy internet users, they are also sharpening their ICT skills in PowerPoint, which is used to present their work, Teams, where work is assigned and disseminated, and Word and Outlook to communicate and create written assignments. Experiencing digital media literacy in junior cycle builds a strong foundation for Microsoft Office Suite in TY.
In line with your digital learning strategy at Kinsale Community School, to support your virtual learning environment, we introduced Microsoft Office Specialist certification as part of the core curriculum for transition year students. Students undertake 4 core modules: Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and Outlook. Using a blended learning approach, students undertake training via the Geometrics learning platform. This is accessible both at school and at home using an action-based learn by doing concept. When asked the benefits, we as teachers, through this blended process, have found students are equipped with the skills necessary to be independent learners and proficient in the use of the Microsoft Suite. Students gain key life skills employable both in an educational and workplace setting, all while gaining international certification.
Sharing best practice and innovative teaching methods is an active part of daily life at Kinsale Community School. As a member of the TY team, we're continually looking for new opportunities for our students to develop their skill set. With the introduction of Office 365, we felt that MOS provided a supportive solution to enable both our students and our staff to master their skills in Office applications. It enables a blended learning approach and supports independent learning as students bridge the gap to senior cycle. The skills and certification that students gain are easily transferable and help to build and support them throughout their journey at senior cycle, onto third level and into working life. Competitions are always a very big part of the TY experience, and it's even better when you can marry competitions with digital skills. Microsoft and Prodigy Learning won the MOS 4 Nations Championship, where students from all over Ireland and the UK compete in a variety of categories to demonstrate their digital skills. We've been fortunate enough to experience a number of successes in the short time that MOS has been running in our school. Recently, we were presented with the Prodigy Learning Centre of Excellence Award, which recognises the delivery of MOS certification to over 250 TY students. In June, one of our TY students was one of 10 finalists across Ireland and the UK, selected to compete in the PowerPoint category at the MOS 4 Nations Championship. It was a fantastic learning experience for our student, and it also enabled our student cohort to see the value and importance of digital skills at both a national and global level. The skills our students have gained in junior cycle through the completion of digital media literacy and coding shorter courses, together with Microsoft Office Specialist and Transition Year, have provided them with the perfect foundation to commence Leaving Cert Computer Science.
Kinsale Community School is a Phase 2 school in computer science. Leaving Cert Computer Science includes how programming and computer thinking can be applied to the solution of problems, and how computing technology impacts the world around us. The course involves students working together to solve problems and produce code. Students will learn computer thinking, how to analyse problems, computer terms, programming languages, and how to read, write, test, and modify computer programs.
We're really grateful to the PDST, Microsoft, and all of their educational partners for their support in helping teachers and students reach their potential at Kinsale Community School.
So thanks very much, Maria. I loved how you told the story of Kinsale Community College and how you came to choose your VLE after a whole school inspection in 2017. and being involved in the pilot program for Digital Learning Framework. It was also nice to see the progression of your students' digital skills through the short course in digital media literacy and onto the MOS program in transition year. Your students developing life skills while earning international certification. I also thought it was very interesting when you spoke about marrying the development of digital skills with the competition in MOS Four Nations Championships, and well done to your students who have competed in this. So thanks again, Maria, and the staff of Kinsale Community College for sharing your story. So next we have chosen to highlight a fantastic module which is coming soon and will be available free of charge to all schools. It has been developed by CS Inc., which stands for Computer Science Inclusive, and their sole goal is to promote coding and computer science at second level. So we're going to hear a little about this now.
This is a short video to give you a preview of the CS Inc. TY Computer Science program. This program is a free online learning environment and provides a complete package for teachers with lesson plans, content, video and solutions. All teachers will need to do is to register. CS Inc. has many years' experience offering training to teachers and students in computer science. It is from the experience of this educational journey, together with the use of proven pedagogies, that this course was developed. As you can see on this main landing page, there are 4 independent 8-week modules available to teachers and students. This means a teacher can do one 8-week module or could complete all 4 if they chose. As a teacher, you can present the material in the student class materials in class yourself, or if students are working remotely, they can access the videos and the class materials, thus allowing teachers to provide a blended approach to delivery. The student class materials includes tasks for the students, and the teachers will have solutions to all of these tasks. At the end of each 8-week module, students are assessed automatically using a quiz format where the results are instantly generated. Successful students will get a certificate of completion from TU Dublin. Just going back to the main page now, and to reiterate, there are 4 independent 8-week modules available for teachers to use in the TY program for their students, and we hope that this website will be available for teachers in January 2021. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this video.
So thanks very much to Dr. Keith Quill and his team from TU Dublin who very kindly put that video together for us. I really like the way all the content, including the assessment, has been carefully created, so even the teacher who may not be the most confident in coding could deliver this. The fact that it can be self-guided or teacher-led and it is certified by TU Dublin is fantastic also. So thanks very much. And while we are focusing on modules and resources for the development of coding and computer science, the PAC team at Maynooth University Department of Computer Science develops resources and offers support to aid teaching topics in computer science. They will provide workshops, and further information can be found through the URL which I'll share in the chat. And that URL is pact.cs.nuim.ie. So with that, I'm going to hand you back to Stephen, who's going to run through the setting up of breakout rooms.
Thank you, Brendan. At this stage of the live event, participants broke off into a facilitated group discussion where they looked at some of the key learning from the earlier part of the webinar. Following on from this discussion, feedback was taken in the main room. This feedback will be available on the PDST TY webpage. So then, to close off the webinar, I just want to remind you all that there is school support available for TY, and if you want to apply for that, you can do so at the pdst.ie/school support page. You'll need your school's roll number and the password shown on screen to complete that application. And a reminder too that all applications should be done in consultation with school management, as a single application goes in for each school which covers all support that the school is looking for. If you have any questions, please email us at ty@pdst.ie. You can follow us on Twitter at pdstty, or you can check out the TY webpage on pdst.ie. A reminder that there is a GASHGA webinar for TY coordinators, which should be available online now. There was also a webinar for teachers of Irish in transition year. Again, this should be made available online. If you have difficulty finding it, please send us an email. Other than that, I just want to thank you for joining us on this webinar. We hope that you found it useful and informative, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.